Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is another one of the model reviews that I do sometimes, and this one we're going to look at the Corgi Original Omnibus Company Northern Counties Palatine 2. Now the Palatine 2 first appeared in 1993, the pre-production versions of it anyway. The first one made in real life was on a Leyland Olympian chassis, and after that they built them on Volvo Olympians, DAF DB250s, a few on Dennis Arrows. The original version of the Palatine, which was retrospectively named the Palatine 1 when the Palatine 2 appeared, remained in production, and it was produced alongside the Palatine 2, and both continued in production until about the late 90s when they were swept aside by the rise of the low floor bus. So the Corgi Original Omnibus version, 1/76 scale, captures a look of the prototype quite well. This Blackpool one that we've got shows the box that they came in. We've also got the East Yorkshire model there. Corgi did do two versions of the casting, one with a rear window and one without, a rear lower deck window should I say. These are both the same one. There was, as I say, a version with no lower deck window. You just have to imagine how that looked with a blank panel at the bottom of the lower deck there. It was a different casting, it didn't just have a bit of infill stuck in. They had actually done a different casting for the lower half of the bus. But as I say, both these have got the rear lower deck windows. The Corgi casting represents the Volvo Olympian, although a couple of the releases were meant to be a DAF and a Dennis Arrow respectively. In reality they would have had different front grills and various other detail differences, but the casting was just one casting for all, so they are slightly incorrect if you get those. The DAF was a Harris Bus one and the Dennis Arrow was a Nottingham City Transport. But again, it's the limitations manufacturers have to work with. So I've just taken the lid of the box off the Blackpool one so we can see what we're working with. So yeah, if you look at it, just at a glance, it does capture the look of the prototype quite well. The Northern Counties Palatine 2 is very similar in styling to the Alexander Royale. It's a bit of a moot point as to who stole whose styling with that. The Royale emerged about a month after the first Northern Counties Palatine 2 did, but they were remarkably similar at the front end with this rather large windscreen like that, and the similar upper deck front window shape as well. So have a look at the front. The grill's nicely cast into the casting there. The wipers and things are printed on, but from a normal viewing distance they don't look too bad at all. Got the typical large destination blind that was a feature of the real thing, and the front upper deck window, the shape of it captured really well. You can see this one's got no mirrors, it's one I've bought second hand. The East Yorkshire one that we're going to look at in a minute has got its mirrors on. I'm very much a both mirrors on or both mirrors off modeler. I don't like ones where one mirror's been broken off. You may as well take the other one off, it looks a bit silly. So if we go around to the side, again it looks pretty decent. As always with Original Omnibus Company modern image vehicles of this era, the door is just printed on, the sort of paintwork and the divider there is printed on. You can make that look a bit better by cutting out a bit of plastic that's the same size, then cutting out two holes where the windows go and just overlaying that across it to give some relief. All of the Original Omnibus Company production had a split level step, you can see there. That was a feature that became quite common in the 1990s. It was advised that it be fitted by what was known as DIPTAC, the Disabled Persons Transport Advisory Committee. Not all of the real Northern Counties Palatine 2s that were produced had the split level step, but all of the Corgi ones have. On these two it's prototypical, the Blackpool one and the East Yorkshire one. The real vehicles did have split level steps, but there are some of the production where the real vehicle didn't. The glazing's printed on, it's actually a plastic box on both decks is the glazing, a bit similar to the box lid with an open bottom there. Very similar to that kind of thing with the glazing printed onto it. You can't really tell with this one so much because it's got black around the windows, and that does hide the printed glazing. If I look at the East Yorkshire one, this has got the livery colour. It's not very easy to tell with the dark colour there, the maroon, but if you go down to the cream at the bottom it does look a bit more printed. And some of the ones like with white around the windows and things, you can tell it's a printed sort of display or printed window rather than a separate part of the casting. But as I say, depending on the paint job you can't really tell. This Blackpool one you can't really tell at all. Go around to the back, you've got the prototypical repeater lights there, moulded nicely into the casting. The real one had those as well. Got the engine ventilation grills there, again nicely cast into it, looking good. And then round to the offside. One of the things that does let it down a little bit, this staircase panel is actually part of the glazing unit, so it's printed on. Again, you can't really tell too much on this one because it's all the same colour. The East Yorkshire one, you can see there's a bit of a colour variation where they've printed that onto there, contrasting to the paint around it. But again, it doesn't look too bad overall. The roof, like any sort of modern image vehicle, not a lot to report on there really, not a lot of real features to incorporate, so again looks quite nice. The individual panel lines cast into it. If we look into the interior, they all had a one colour moulded interior. It's prototypically grey in this Blackpool one. The real ones were grey as well. They just had a bit of what was known as graffiti maquette on the seats, so it was basically a grey base colour. It just had various flashes of colour down the middle of each seat cushion. But again, you can't really tell. At one time I would have taken the bus apart and painted the interior, but I can't really be bothered. These original omnibus ones, they split in half along sort of the halfway point of the vehicle. You can see the seam line at the back there where the two halves of the casting meet, and it comes down so it splits just above the lower deck windows there. The only way really to get them apart is to hammer a screwdriver in between the two bits, so you always damage the paint. And if you're not careful, you crack the glazing unit as well. As I say, it is like a plastic tray like this, so you do tend to crack the top of it. That's not too bad, you can't see that, but if you're not careful, you crack down the side as well, and then it becomes visible on the windows. So if you are taking one apart, just be careful of that. Mind the door as well. The door's separate to the main glazing unit. It just kind of balances in. It slots into a slot on the step there, and there's it kind of fits into a slot on the glazing unit as well. So they do come off separately, and they are quite hard to relocate. As I say, I'm not going to bother doing the interior on this one. I'm going to repaint this bus, I think, at some point, the exterior of it. But the black window surrounds can stay on it for the livery I'm going to do. So I'm not going to bother taking it apart. You do risk damage to the casting, but it's up to you if you want to do it. So the Blackpool one represents vehicle 375 M375 SCK, which was delivered in 1994. On Route 22A to St Anne's via Blackpool. You can see the 22 is done in white, the rest of the blind is yellow. That's prototypical. They did actually have day-glow yellow number reels as well, but in real life these vehicles, when they were new, spent a lot of time on the same route, the 22A, or 22 and 22A, so the 2s became faded as the sun bleached them, and they got bleached white. So if you see photos of the real thing, they have got white blind reels on the numbers, but the A that wasn't shown as often retained its yellow, and the destination obviously was varied a lot more, retained its day glow yellow as well. They've also done it on the side. Whether the side blind will get bleached in the same way is a bit of a moot point, but they've done it that way as well. And they've also done it on the rear blind. Again, it's unlikely the rear blind will get sun bleached, but they've carried it round there. Doesn't look too bad. It did happen in real life, as I say. So we'll have a look at the East Yorkshire one. Obviously the same casting. You can see the mirrors on this one though. This has retained its mirrors, possibly slightly overscale, but not looking too bad at all. They benefit from the inside here, the viewing face of them being painted silver, but this is out of my display case, so I'm not going to paint this one. I'm just going to leave it as it was. Again, the door is printed flat on as they were on all the castings, but you can't tell quite as much on this one with it being dark coloured. Split level step, again prototypical. The East Yorkshire one, this is 586 and 586 BRH, one of a batch of 6 purchased by East Yorkshire, and they had electronic dot matrix destination blinds, which is represented here quite nicely. Route 152 to Hull via Anlaby. Again, nice touch. The side destination blind is in the correct place. On the East Yorkshire ones, they were up there, cut into the bodywork. Whereas on the Blackpool one that we've seen earlier on, they were put into the first of the side windows. As you can see, that variation is nicely modelled. There's no rear blind on this one. I don't believe they had rear blinds. If they did, it was in the window, but I can't remember them having rear blinds. I do recall the rail vehicles quite well, these East Yorkshire ones. I remember going on 584, I think it was, when they were more or less new, and being really impressed by the performance. The driver went round a roundabout, set off up the dual carriageway afterwards, kicked it down so it changed down into a lower gear, and revved the engine higher than I've ever heard anybody rev a diesel engine before. I thought it was going to explode and come out the back, but it didn't. The bus just took off like a rocket. It was certainly going far quicker than the 40 miles per hour speed limit on the road. Just a quick look at the chassis. There is some detail moulded into there. You can see the exhaust pipe moulded onto the back of the chassis there, and a representation of the air tanks and things like that. It's quite nice. Again, if you model one up on a ramp, some model high Weemers kind of thing, lifting it up off the ground, then nice to see underneath it that there's some detail. But yeah, all in all, nice model. Not the perhaps the most detailed model you'll ever come across, but more than adequate certainly. So what price can you expect to pay for these? I mean, obviously they're all second hand now. It went out of production quite a number of years ago, so you can only really get second hand ones. If you're lucky, you can get one for about a tenner, depending which one you want, which release. Certainly like the Blackpool ones, you can just about pick them up for £10 still. You're probably looking at a bit more than that normally now. £12, £13 perhaps, somewhere around there. Going up to the high teens, early 20s for some of them, like the East Yorkshire. I paid £18 for that one from Hatton's Model Railways, who sadly have recently announced that they're going to close down. They had one on again more recently for the same price, £18, so that's about the going rate for that one. There are some of them, there's a first liveried one, first Badger line I believe it was, in the Barbie livery, and they are more sought after and more valuable. Happens at the minute, as I do this one in January 2024, I've got one listed on their site for £26. Bearing in mind they're normally slightly cheaper than the internet auction sites. So you're looking anywhere, as I say, between a tenner for one with damage like the mirrors off like that one, through to about the high 20s, about £30, somewhere like that, depending exactly which one you want. As I say, some of them are more collectible than others. But yeah, not a bad casting at all. Plenty of them still around. If you want one, have a look through the internet auction sites, the model shop websites, get down to your local swap meet, etc., and you will be able to pick one up without a problem. So as always, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.